I'm a homeschool mom of 7 kids ages 4 to 19. We've been homeschooling for the past 17 years, and I love sharing with you the things I've learned in research about the science of reading and the tips that we've learned while implementing things in our own homeschool. I have other videos linked below, but in this video we're going to discuss ways that we've found to implement fluency and read alouds in our homeschool. We tell our kids that reading a passage fluently means it sounds the way that they would speak, with expression and inflection. Every day during our reading instruction, the goal is to reread a passage fluently. For some kids, this might mean reading several paragraphs. For other kids, it might be reading 1 or 2 sentences. First, we read through the passage with guided reading techniques. You can see the video linked below for more information. Then I choose a portion of the section that we have read, and I have them follow along with their eyes on print, their finger below the words, sliding along under as I read it fluently. I read it with expression and inflection fluently, going slow enough that they can keep up, but fast enough that it sounds the way I would speak. After they have observed me model fluently reading the passage, sliding their finger underneath, then they slide their finger under the words and they reread it fluently. I make sure that they're not tapping under the words, as this can make them sound like a robot, but rather they are skating under the words, sliding their finger along. So we have a challenge in our house after we've read through the passage, then that's the passage that there is going to be assigned for them for fluency. I put a little sticky note on it, and they need to go around to 3 siblings and read it aloud to them, and the sibling initials the paper so that I know that it's been read to them, or they can read it to dad, or they can read it to the dog, or they can read it to a stuffed animal. Obviously they can't sign, but at least we can make some exceptions. They can read it into a tape recorder, which is sometimes fun for them. They can read it with a microphone. They can reread it in a funny voice, such as a cowboy or a mouse, or loud or soft, or with a British accent or robot, or as a monster. They can cut up the text and put it back together to reread it, but the point is to keep rereading that same passage until they can fluently read it, which I tell them that means that they're going to read the way it sounds when they talk. Each day, the goal is to have a passage that the student masters, and you can collect all those in a folder where these are all their fluent passages and celebrate the successes each time. Celebrating with them will help them to identify as a reader, and that confidence is very helpful for their motivation. We also like to keep a chart where you can track how long it took them to read the passage the first time through, and how long it took them on a hot reading. So the first time was the cold reading, you might graph it on graph paper, and then with the hot reading right beside it, they see how much it grew and how much they improved, and that can be very motivating for them as they see the progress. Another pillar necessary for good reading instruction is reading comprehension and vocabulary. Reading aloud great books will improve both of these. Typical kids have an ability to comprehend at a reading level that's 2 years above their own reading level. In our house, we read tons of illustrated picture books throughout the day, but I also read several chapter books. We just finished Anne of Green Gables. We're currently reading Island of the Blue Dolphins and Little Britches. Our kids of all ages enjoy listening to these books. After I'm done reading in the evenings, I'll go ahead and put on an audiobook for the kids to listen to as they continue to fall asleep. Ambleside Online has a great list of books that are focused on history and also on science and great literature. They have teamed up with LibriVox in order to make a succinct list that I can just click on. Read Aloud Revival has excellent recommendations, and they have a list as well that links the best readers on LibriVox to really good books. If you're not familiar with LibriVox, it's a free resource for listening to books that are in the public domain being read aloud. Some readers are better than others. That's why it's helpful to find a list of the good readers. If you simply search for the book title with the words read aloud afterward, you'll also find a lot of people that have volunteered their time to read the book more comprehensively. LibriVox has breaks after each chapter, and so sometimes it's more fun for the kids to listen to a different reader. I recently found a playlist called Internet Grandpa that has a lot of really great books, and one called Caribou Public Library, where she reads aloud great chapter books. But if you simply put in the book that you're looking for, you'll find a lot of different options that'll pop up. I've also done this searching just for illustrated picture books. If I'm wanting a certain one and our library doesn't have it, I'll just type in the name as well as read aloud, and it will pop up so I can expose the kid to the ideas in that book if it's something that we're specifically needing. While we're snuggled up reading a book, it's good to pause every now and then and ask the kids, what do you think will happen? Do you think this character should or should not have done what he did? What was your favorite character, or who do you relate to the most? Did you like the ending? Would you have written a different one? What if the character didn't do what she did? What might have happened? Would you do what he did, or would you have done something differently? I'm a huge proponent of Charlotte Mason's idea of narration because of all the benefits that it has, and that's simply asking the child to tell back the story in their own words after they're done reading. This helps them to remember the information as well as organize their thoughts and develop the ability to communicate well. I always have a read aloud in the car so that we can take advantage of downtime. We often take a book out on the hammock and snuggle up to read outside, or have an audio book going while the kids are playing Legos. We like to do crafts while we listen to a book together, and we always read before bedtime. I tend to do illustrated books during the day when the kids can see the pictures, but at bedtime I do the harder chapter books, so even if it's above their level, they're still and quiet and can fall asleep, while the older ones are able to enjoy uninterrupted listening. There was a study that I found interesting, which was about how much exposure children had to rare words during different circumstances. So in children's picture books, there was 31 rare words per 1,000. In adult books, such as some of these chapter books we were talking about, there was 50 rare words per 1,000. But when college graduates were talking to their friend or their spouse, there was only 17 rare words per 1,000. So that just shows how beneficial it is to having children being exposed, even just to simple picture books. There's often words that we just would not use in regular conversation around the house that they're being exposed to. And reading these harder chapter books certainly exposes them to a lot of vocabulary that I wouldn't use in my common speech. I love, love, love 5 in a row books. I did another video about those, which I'll link below. Doing the activities in these is great for increasing reading comprehension and vocabulary. She takes simple children's books and she makes all kinds of inferences and connections to history and geography, science, and art. Instead of trying to balance her book with the picture book and 5 kids on my lap, I go ahead and write in pencil in the words on the page themselves about the ideas and the connections that she has. So as we're reading through, I can just organically make those connections with the kids as I'm reminded about them because I read my handwritten notes on the page that we're reading. Beautiful Feet has a similar curriculum where they take a lot of great nuggets out of good, rich books. And of course, I can't recommend Sunlight curriculum enough. It has so many excellent books. It ties it to historical periods. And even if you don't use their program, just looking at their book list suggestions is very helpful. Beautiful Feet has excellent book suggestions as well. And we have used Tapestry of Grace for several years. All 3 of those programs tend to have similar book suggestions because they're just drawing off of great classic books that your kids are going to love. A study was done that showed independently reading for about 1 minute a day was what most students that were at the 10th percentile were doing. They were reading 1 minute a day, which was about 8,000 words per year. Those that were ranked at the 50th percentile, on average, were reading about 5 minutes per day, which was 282,000 words a year. Those that were in the 90th percentile were reading about 20 minutes a day. That's about 1.8 million words per year. So based on this study, we would want to be in that upper percentile. We would want to aim for reading about 20 minutes a day. How can we increase the word reading count when we're just learning to read? We can reread for fluency. That basically means that after we've done a cold reading and been guided through it by the teacher, then we want the student to watch as we model the reading with expression, and their eyes are on print the whole time, following along either with their finger or with a bookmark underneath the words. So they're internalizing the print, and then they read back through it again. This can be a challenge for some readers. They don't want to go back through it again. It was a struggle the first time, but I just tell them each time you go through, it's going to get easier and easier. Hopefully you will find some of the ideas that we've discussed in this video to be helpful in helping motivate your child to reread the passage fluently. It certainly can increase their word count and expedite them to becoming a better and better reader. I encourage you to continue to find ways to incorporate read-alouds into your daily routine while kids are taking a bath, while listening to an audiobook during cooking, while listening to stories that you have taped yourself reading earlier while they're playing Legos, while waiting at a car wash because you have a book in the glove box. Anything that you can do to capture those moments and introduce great ideas and adventure that would interest your child and accelerate their learning. I pray you find much joy as you and your child go on the adventure of learning to read together.